What you're witnessing is there's something about Jesus that causes the devil to show up in your life. So if you become a husband, fellas, you are choosing, whether you believe God or not, you don't even have to believe in God. You're choosing to take on the image of Jesus in what we call marriage. And so it becomes the devil's job to make sure that you don't display Jesus at all. So of course he's not going to want you to talk right to your wife. Of course he's not going to want you to be kind to your wife. Of course he's not going to want you to love your wife, be patient with your wife. Of course not. And ladies, your job is to reverence the husband the way we worship Jesus. Well, of course the devil doesn't want you to show reverence to your husband to the world. Of course he wants you to be disrespectful, and he wants you to be combative, and he wants you to be difficult, etc., etc. Of course he wants these things from us. So congratulations. The day you said I do, you entered into warfare, whether you agreed to it or not. And so let's begin to have a real conversation about this. Because Jesus is the one who told us, don't enter into anything lightly. You must count the cost. That's why you must go to premarital counseling, because you got to be able to count that cost. And people that's been through my premarital counseling know it can get pretty extensive. Because my goal is to make sure you're prepared. And when you start going through it, you're not shocked. You might be struggling, but you're not shocked about it. You're like, oh, well, yeah, we were told this was going to happen. Like, we might not be listening, but we're not shocked about it, right? So let's go a little bit deeper now. Now let's go into the real conversation. Second Corinthians chapter 10. Let's go there. Second Corinthians chapter 10. And we're going to look at verse 3. And I want to begin to show y'all some things before we get into the first assignment. Verse 3 of Second Corinthians chapter 10. For though we walk in the flesh, that means you walk in your natural bodies, your natural way of living, right? Your carnal way of living. We do not war according to the flesh. What does that mean? It means that when you fight in your flesh, you fight, you pick up an extension cord, a racetrack, a chair, a bottle, a pool stick, don't matter. You just got to win the fight. By any means necessary, you just got to win the fight. If you in a brawl, just pick up anything and use it. That you just war in the flesh. When armies go to battle, they use tanks and bombs and machine guns, etc. But it says we do not war according to the flesh. So what is he talking about? Well, he's talking about, as you see at the top, the spiritual war. So then in verse 4, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. What does that mean? It means that when you are going to war spiritually, you cannot use a gun, a knife, a pool stick, a pool ball, a pillow. You can't use physical stuff. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds. So in warfare, what's happening is there are these strongholds that we all have that we're wrestling with, and they need to be pulled down. Let me give you an analogy. It's like weeds in your grass. Those weeds are going to war with your yard. And if you want your yard to be healthy and clean and beautiful, you have to pull up those weeds. Well, the same thing in the spirit. If you want your marriage to be healthy and thriving and vibrant, you got to pull down the strongholds. Is this analogy making sense to everybody? All right, good. So watch this. I love the fact that y'all be on camera too. Man, it helps me a lot. Watch this. Watch this. Casting down arguments. Uh-oh. So your arguments are spiritual. Casting down arguments. See, let me explain this. Before you argue with your spouse, you've already had the argument in the spirit, in your own mind. And that was your opportunity to cast it down. But your pride and your ego will not allow you to. Cause you're gonna get this conversation. You gonna hear what I got to say. And every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. So all of those thoughts you have that are exalting itself, that have nothing to do with what God said, yep, that stuff too. Bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. Now I don't want to teach this because I'm just introducing this because we're going to be in this marriage warfare for a while, I think, unless the Lord takes me somewhere else. So here's the overall point. We don't have to dissect these scriptures today. The point is, warfare in marriage begins inside of you, in your mind. All right, now we're going to go to, because these are the scriptures that we're going to be building on over the next couple of weeks. 1 Peter chapter 5, and we're going to look at verse 8. Verse 8. So write these scriptures down if you can, and just keep these in front of your mind throughout the week, over the next few weeks. So it's Matthew 4, 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5. Sorry, Matthew 4, 1 through 11, 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5. I'll put them in the chat, actually. So the thing is, watch this. Be sober. That means to be aware, be alert. Be vigilant. That means to be assertive. Because your adversary, y'all see that? Circle that if you can, or write this in your notebooks. Your adversary. Your adversary. The word adversary is basically a word that means, I'm gonna look it up right now. That word means an opponent in a contest or conflict. Can I just explain this to y'all? The Bible is saying your adversary, the devil. So why are you making your spouse your adversary? The conflict is with the devil, but for some reason the spouse gets the brunt of it. Well, you don't understand, Pastor. They left the dishes out. Oh, y'all going to war over some dishes, huh? You going to dishes, huh? You get your juvenile on, huh? That's for you, Melvin. You ain't even mean that. So listen, your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion. I didn't even know you could do this. Wow, you can wow. You learn something new every day. Seeking who he may devour. Resist him. All right, let me read that again. Your adversary, the devil, walks around like a lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him. Well, how do you resist him? You got to deal with it spiritually first before you go to war with your spouse. Because by the time you get to your spouse, you should have disarmed all of the enemy's tactics. How do you do that? Love, maturity, emotional stability, forgiveness, understanding, slow to speak, quick to listen. All of these are disarming tactics of the enemy. And if need be, if none of that works, guess what you do? Pull out your weapon of long suffering. Yes, Christian, that's exactly right. The carnal mind perceives the other person wrong. And what ends up happening is not you, but people, they create this idea about their spouse that turns into an actual ideology. So instead of saying they had a moment of selfishness, we say you're selfish. They had a moment of weakness, and then we say, no, you're weak. So we take their moment and we make it their identity. You had a moment of anger, and we label them unstable. So now the warfare is becoming now a part of the language, and you now begin to curse your spouse. But I don't want to go too deep yet. I'm gonna stay on the surface because I'm trying to introduce this. Ephesians chapter 6. Let's go there. Ephesians chapter 6, we're going to look at verse 10 through 13. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles. Well, what does this word mean? What is the wiles? Let's look it up. It means devious or cunning stratagems employed in manipulating or persuading someone to do what one wants. Tricks. So think about this. The Bible is telling you, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the tricks and the manipulation and the persuading of the devil. Y'all listen to me. Listen. This is Resurrection Sunday, and I know people don't believe Jesus is Lord, and I know there are people who don't believe that God is real. I know there are people who who are atheists. Like, all of this is mystical to them. I get it, but listen to what I'm telling you. Listen to what I'm telling you. If all of this is fake, then I got a lot of questions for atheists. I got a lot of questions for atheists. Listen to me. It says, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against. So what does this mean? Without the armor of God, you're not standing against anything. That's why people argue for years and years and years and years and years. They fight for years and years and years and years. Because you don't know what's really happening. Help us, Holy Ghost. I'm getting excited. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. Don't get scared, y'all. It's about to get real though. But against principalities. These are fallen angels that are working with Satan. And then it says against powers. These are also fallen angels who are working with Satan. And against rulers of the darkness of this age. These are also fallen angels working with the devil. and against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. These are also another group of angels who are fallen, who are working with the devil. But notice the Bible says you're not fighting against flesh and blood. Yet, what do? We fight the flesh and blood of our spouse all the time, not realizing you're actually being tricked by the devil into fighting by these devils or angels who are fallen and working with Satan. How do they do it? For example, you're just being innocent and scrolling on Instagram. All of a sudden, and this is a real story, I'm telling y'all, I'm using this example because I've done this. This has happened with a client. They're scrolling on Instagram. Ooh, look at that. Look at what that husband does for their wife. Artist, I want my husband to put gas in my car every Sunday. Why do you want to do that? Well, where did that come from? Well, I saw on social media that this spouse does this for, and I just feel like I deserve that. Oh, and so the husband is like, I do a lot, I do enough already. I'm not doing that. I do this, and now she won't. I'm not doing it just because she saw it on Instagram. This is a true story. I'm not making this up. This is a true story. This was actually a session with a client a couple years ago. This is a true story. So what did the enemy do? Influenced social media to put out propaganda that can negatively affect an individual in their perception of how they see marriage. Long story short, it caused them to go into an all-out war over gas being put in the car on Sunday. This true story, they were at war over this. Like their home was a war zone over this. Like he wasn't doing it. And she was like, you selfish. He's like, no, I'm not. Like this was a war zone. So think about this. That's a petty example. What about real life stuff? How is the devil positioning his fallen angels in his army to set up mental war zones, causing you to see a certain way in your marriage? Now, we're just on the surface. We're not even getting deep yet. Notice what it says. We don't war against the flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers of the darkness, and spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. Let me show y'all something. Matter of fact, let's do this. It's already 10. It's already all right. Let's do this. I need y'all to get out a sheet of paper. We have to be aware of the spiritual warfare from all the different angles it comes at us when it comes to marriage. The question becomes, why didn't grandfather marry grandmother? Why did the man and woman, your mom and dad, get a divorce? What is it going on? And only you can answer this because you know the details, but I'm making you aware. What is it about that side of the family where there's a war against marriage coming at you? If a grandfather's happily married, loved each other, but for some reason there was a war against your biological father and he didn't get that. So what I'm showing you is at each generation, the war is coming based on whatever, let me say it a better way. The war comes based on what the experience is. So for you, you experienced a mom and a dad who got married and got divorced. Well, guess what? That's coming for you. Now, this is not a time to be afraid. This is the time to become wise and say, what do I need to do? Because the enemy is seeking whom he may devour. And then on your dad's side, man, you have an opportunity to get back the blessing of living happily ever after and loving each other tremendously and making it work forever. You have an opportunity right now to have that, but the devil doesn't want you to have that. Does this make sense? The question becomes, how does the devil attack you? Don't be afraid, because the enemy don't got no power over you. But the point is, how is he going to attack you regarding the marriage? Like, this is what you got to be thinking about, because you have the opportunity to be the second generation of happily ever after and remain married. Not just for the sake of being married, but actually being happily married and experiencing a good life with someone you love and do life with. So what becomes the war against that? You have to become aware of the things that went on in your childhood. Because as you got older, those things become more prominent and they become a very important piece in the dynamic of how you function as an individual. Certain things you might not like, certain things y'all might not like, might not experience, might have experienced, might had to overcome. And then all of a sudden you're looking at it in the face in your marriage again, being reminded of the traumas, the pains, the hurts, etc. Understanding that, man, I don't want to deal with this. I saw this growing up. Because what if your parents were married, but they were unhealthily married? And now you have an unhealthy marriage. Now you're seeing your parents and you're like, I don't want to deal with this. So now it becomes this warfare and the devil seeking whom he may devour. Now the war on your marriage becomes not about if I love her or want her or need her or knowing she's the one. It's I'm at war with what's happened before me. And the only way I can overcome it is by stepping into Jesus in a resurrected manner to overcome death.
The only way.
The only way.
The only way.
Same thing with Sierra and Suslaw. The only way you overcome is by the blood of Jesus through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is stepping into life out of death, knowing that the enemy is seeking whom he may devour, and I have to be aware of my childhood and my history and my bloodline to see and be aware of the enemy's tricks. Why do I feel this way? Why am I thinking like this? What makes me automatically just naturally want this? Where does this inclination come from? Where does this appetite come from? Where does this desire come from? All of it is connected to where you came from and how you grew up. What if people had this level of knowledge going into marriage? What if people could find out today, man, that's what that is. My grandmother was single. My grandfather was cheated on. My mother was married 3 times. My daddy, ... Now you understand your war throughout your entire life, going into your marriage. And now you understand what's trying to break up your marriage and the avenues or the ways the enemy can do it.